Good day to you once again, my listener, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Bayo. If this is your first time on this channel, please like, share, and subscribe for more updates from me. If you remember in our previous episode, we discussed the concept of arguments, the components of an argument, and how to recognize an argument. This week, we shall be discussing further on arguments, and especially we will be dealing with the types of arguments. If this topic is new to you or you are new to logic and critical thinking, please take your time to study our earlier episodes on this channel for proper understanding of this episode we're about to kickstart. Let me remind you once again that logic is very simple. We just have to take it one step at a time. If there is anything you don't understand about my lesson here, please use the comment box below. I'll be shedding more lights on them in my subsequent episodes. Thank you. If you recall in our last episode where we discussed the conceptualization of an argument, we hold that every argument makes a claim that its premises provide grounds for the truth of its conclusion, and that the notion of claim itself is the mark of an argument. However, there are two different ways in which a conclusion may be supported by its premises, and thus it gives us the two great classes of an argument, or better put, two types of an argument, namely the deductive and the inductive argument. Understanding this distinction is essential to our understanding of logic. Let's begin with the deductive types of an argument. The term deductive is derived from the verb deduce, and the word deduce itself comes from the Latin word deducere. I don't know if I pronounce it well, which means to lead or bring down. In the context of reasoning, deduce refers to the process of drawing logical conclusion or inferences based on a given information or premises. A deductive argument therefore makes the claim that its conclusion is supported by its premises conclusively. In other words, it is a type of reasoning that aims to provide logically conclusive support to its conclusion or for its conclusion. When we say an argument is deductive, what it means is that the conclusion is logically derived or deduced from the premises. In a deductive argument, the conclusion is considered to be the necessary consequence of the premises. The word deduce does capture the idea that the conclusion is led or derived from the premises through logical reasoning, and it is the major concern of formal logic. A look at a quick example on the right dialog box will show us what a deductive argument is. Example 1. The premise 1 says all mammals are warm-blooded. Premise 2 says a whale is a mammal. And the conclusion says therefore a whale is warm-blooded. In example 1, we can see that the deductive argument follows a general premise about mammals being warm-blooded. It then applies that general premise to the specific case of a whale being mammal. That's another premise, leading to the logical conclusive conclusion that the whale is warm-blooded. A look at this example will find out that it is deductive because there is nothing the conclusion is saying that has not been mentioned in the two premises. And so the conclusion is deduced from the given premises, and it does so conclusively. And that is how we know a deductive argument. The conclusion is not saying anything outside what the premises have said. The same thing applies to our second example, which says all dogs have four legs. Max is a dog, therefore Max has four legs. You find out that there is nothing conclusion is saying that we don't have in the given premises. And so the conclusion is supporting, or we can say the premises are supporting the conclusion because they give evidence or reasons for the conclusions to be supported. And that is how we know what's a deductive argument. Let's go to our second type of argument, which is inductive arguments. Just like deductive too, inductive is derived from the verb induce, And the word induce comes from the Latin word inducere, which means to lead in or to bring about. In the context of reasoning, induce refers to the process of drawing general conclusions or forming general principles based on specific observations or evidences. An inductive argument is a type of reasoning that aims to provide probable support for its conclusion, which implies that, in contrast, does not make a claim as we see in deductive argument. But inductive argument involves moving from specific observations or evidences to broader generalizations or theories. It is worthy to note that in an inductive argument, the conclusion is not guaranteed to be true, but it's supported by available evidence or past experiences. We can see that this type of reasoning is the major concern of the method of scientific inquiries, researches, and findings. In our given example 1, we find the first premise saying, every time I have eaten peanuts, I've had an allergic reaction. Therefore, I'm likely to have an allergic reaction if I eat peanuts again. You see, the conclusion here is probable because we can't guarantee the truth function of that particular argument. And for this reason, we say the argument is inductive. The same applies to our second example, which says, over the past 5 years, the stock market has risen every June. Therefore, it is likely that the stock market will rise again this June. This also is a probable conclusion because it is not guaranteed. And for this reason, the argument is termed inductive argument. Another popular example that I used to use is claiming that it rained yesterday, premise 1. Premise 2, it rained today. And the conclusion is say, therefore, it will rain tomorrow. The raining of yesterday and today does not guarantee the raining of tomorrow, but then they give us some evidences and experiences that may give us the notion that it might rain tomorrow, which is the conclusion. The supports the premises gives an inductive argument are probable supports. Having given us the definitions and the examples of the types of arguments, what are the notable differences between them? We'll find out that number 1, the reasoning approaches are different. In deductive reasoning, it moves from general premises to a specific conclusion such that the premises gives or provide logically conclusive support to the conclusion based on the validity of the argument structure. While in inductive argument, it moves from observation or evidence to a broader generalization or theories, and it aims to provide probable support for the conclusion based on the strength of the evidence or observation. And we can see all other differences here concerning certainty and probability, and logical structure, on the scope of the conclusion and reversibility of both deductive and inductive arguments. So we can read that ourselves to understand better the differences between the deductive and inductive arguments. In a nutshell, the distinction between induction and deduction rests on the nature of the claims made by the two types of arguments and about the relations between their premises and their conclusions. And for this reason, we characterize the two arguments as follows. A deductive argument is one whose conclusion is claimed to follow from its premises with absolute necessity, and this necessity not being a matter of degree or not depending in any way on whatsoever else may be the case. And in sharp contrast, an inductive argument is one whose conclusion is claimed to follow from its premises only with probability. This probability being a matter of degree and dependent on what else may be the case. So from this, we can have a sharp understanding of the differences between a deductive argument and inductive argument. Let's discuss some features of a deductive argument. And in this sense, we are talking about validity, truth, and soundness. Validity refers to the property of an argument where the truth of the premises guarantees the truth of the conclusion. For an argument to be valid, it must conform with the structure. And what we mean by structure is a particular form in which an argument is designed or constructed. We're going to discuss this more in our next episode. To better put, a valid argument is one in which the conclusion logically follows from the premises. In other words, for an argument to be valid, it must be the case that it is possible for the premises to be true while the conclusion is false. A deductive argument is valid when it succeeds in linking with logical necessity the conclusion to its premises. Its validity refers to the relation between its propositions, between the set of propositions that serve as the premises and the one proposition that serve as the conclusion of that argument. It is important to note that truth or falsehood, on the other hand, are attributes of individual proposition. It is not applied to all the propositions in an argument. A single statement that serves as a premise in an argument may be true. The statement that serves as its conclusion may be false. This might have been validly inferred, but to say that any conclusion is itself valid or invalid makes no sense. However, when the argument is valid and all the propositions are true individually, then we say the argument is sound. So the soundness of an argument is validity plus truth. In inductive arguments, because they give probable support, the only feature they have is the strength. So an inductive argument can either be strong in strength or weak, and this is dependent on the probability given to it by its premise. Since our focus is on deductive arguments, let's take a look at some variations of a deductive argument. There are many possible combinations of true and false premises and conclusions in both valid and invalid arguments. We have some illustrations to help us distinguish between valid and invalid arguments. Number one, it is possible to have some valid arguments that contain only true propositions, such as it has true premises and a true conclusion. An instance is what we have here in red. All mammals have lungs. All whales are mammals, therefore all whales have lungs. In this instance, we say this is a valid argument. Also, we look at it, we'll find out that all the propositions are true because all mammals have lungs and all whales are mammals. If we agree to that, then if say therefore that all whales have lungs, then it is also true. And for all these to be true, all these propositions to be true, we say the argument is sound. You may recall that we say that when an argument is valid and all the propositions are true, such argument is said to be a sound argument. So for this example now, we say this example is a valid argument and also with true propositions, and for that reason, the argument is a sound argument. Also, it is worthy to note that some valid arguments contain only false propositions, which implies that they have false premises and a false conclusion. For instance, all four-legged creatures have wings. All spiders have exactly 4 legs, therefore, all spiders have wings. This argument is valid because the conclusion is derived and deduced from the premises. But then the premises and the conclusion are false. But that doesn't make it invalid, it is valid. Only that it is not sound. The argument is not sound because the propositions in the argument are false. It is also quite possible to have an invalid argument that contains all true proposition. For instance, if I own all the gold in Foxnose, then I will be wealthy. I do not own all the gold in Foxnose, therefore I'm not wealthy. It is also possible to have an invalid argument that contains only true premises and a false conclusion. An example is shown below. We found out that the premises of this argument are true, but its conclusion is false. Such an argument cannot be valid because it is impossible for the premises of a valid argument to be true and its conclusion to be false. It is also important to note that some valid arguments have false premises and a true conclusion. We have the instance here which says all fishes are mammals and all whales are fishes. Therefore, all whales are mammals. It's also quite possible to have an invalid argument that have false premises and a true conclusion. If you look at this example, it's more or less like our previous example, but then with a different structure. If you look at them, they look alike and it might be difficult to distinguish the validity and invalidity based on the way we look at it. But by the virtue of its structure, our example 6 is invalid. Like I told you, we'll be discussing the notion of structure of an argument in our next episode. So watch out for that because it's going to also help us to understand the validity and invalidity of arguments the more. In our last example here, we have a case of an invalid argument that contains all false propositions. All mammals have wings, all whales have wings, therefore all mammals are whales. If you look at this example, the problem with this example is not about the falsity of the propositions because we have an argument that is valid and contains all false propositions. But this argument is invalid because of its structure too. The structure does not tally with a structure of an argument, and for that reason it is invalid, coupled with the fact that the propositions are also false. We have come to the end of this episode. Please, if there's anything you don't understand, use the comment section. And please do well to work on the exercises. It will better help you to understand a deductive argument. Having discussed the types of an argument, we are going to be discussing in our next episode categorical propositions and categorical syllogisms. These lessons will help us to understand the structure of an argument and the form of an argument.